Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with the 5 greatest Delius conductors. Well, you really know you're scraping the bottom of the barrel when you get to Delius, don't you? Yeah, really. Actually, that's not true. We've got quite a ways to go. Well, ways to go anyway. But I wanted to do this because Delius is one of those specialty composers who does have a coterie of not only listeners, but performers. He really does. And he may not be popular, and he may not be the greatest thing since sliced bread, but he is a composer with a recognizable idiom and certainly a sense of his own aesthetic and style, and really a wonderful body of work. I think his music is beautiful. But there are conductors who specialized in conducting him. Conductors who specialized in conducting him. Yes, performing him. That sounds better, doesn't it? And here they are. And believe me, you may want to come up with a couple others. Maybe there's one or two others. But this basically exhausts the tribe, I think. I really do. First, Thomas Beecham. Of course, if it weren't for Thomas Beecham, there would be no Delius. Beecham edited his music for publication. He championed it all his life. He's the kind of conductor that a composer, a budding composer, a living composer wishes they had, because he was incredibly charismatic. And Delius's music, it's interesting really, is so not flashy. And Beecham was so vivid and colorful a personality. It's a very, very interesting combination. It's not that Delius didn't write, music that had, a certain amount of attraction. I mean, he did, but, most of his music is pastoral and peaceful and tranquil and, doesn't have a lot of explosive firework stuff. And Beecham was an explosive firework kind of guy. So the fact that he championed Delius all his life is really kind of fascinating, but he did. And so he's got to be number one on any list, although this list, like all of these lists, is in no particular order. Next, Richard Hickox. Hickox was extraordinarily comfortable and expert at Delius's choral music. Things like Sea Drift, for sure, and Sea Drift and other things like Sea Drift, the songs of Appalachia, all that stuff. He was really a fabulous choral conductor. Hickox could be variable in orchestral works, but he did quite a bit of Delius, mostly for Chandos, and he did it extraordinarily well. And he was lucky to be extremely well recorded, too. So that helped a lot also. Next, Charles Mackerras. Charles Mackerras could conduct the phone book, and it would sound fabulous. He could do anything. And just about everything that he did was marvelous. But the thing that was so interesting about Mackerras is that he was particularly good at niche composers. He did fabulous Havergal Brian. He did wonderful Delius, a large series of recordings, principally for Argo. Janacek, when Mackerras got a hold of him, was a niche composer. He turned him into a mainstream composer. But, Mackerras was just such an amazing interpreter. But he did have that gift of being able to take music that nobody had heard and make it sound like, well, it's something we should be listening to every day. And his Delius is no exception. It's extraordinarily fine, really as good as Beecham's. And he, also did some work. He used Beecham's scores and things like that, because he was into the authenticity angle and whatnot. And so, he positioned himself as sort of a logical successor to Beecham. And he was. His Delius recordings don't get the recognition that his Janacek and Handel and Mozart and all those recordings do. And it's just because... it's because no one cares about Delius. That's the only reason, because they're every bit as good. He even recorded, Village Romeo and Juliet, the opera. It's the best recording of that, hands down. So, yeah, he was a big deal. Next, John Barbirolli. Barbirolli is another one who was really, really a wonderful Delius interpreter. He was so poetic and so romantic and so spontaneous. And, Delius is a composer who really substitutes spontaneity for just excitement. If you, some composers can really rev things up, and Delius wasn't one of those guys. But his music has this absolutely natural rhapsodic flow. And if you can capture that, then it goes a long way towards substituting for the fact that, the music doesn't usually have, doesn't usually get your pulse racing. It doesn't have that sort of rhythmic drive that a lot of the most exciting music has. It just has this sort of effortless momentum of its own. And if you don't capture that, then what you get is a shapeless puddle of chromatic sludge. And a lot of Delius sounds like a shapeless puddle of chromatic sludge in the hands of less expert conductors. Last but not least, Charles Groves. Charles Groves was just fantastic in English music, and in his English music box, there's all kinds of interesting Delius that lots of other people didn't do. And I think that he's so terribly underrated because he never had great orchestras most of the time. He was in Bournemouth or someplace like that. Although that orchestra is very good now, but back when Charles Groves had them, they had to be made good. And he did that. His Delius recordings are really pretty first rate. They really are. Things like Massive Life, which Hickox also did really well. These are really, really important recordings of major works. And Groves was completely and totally reliable. He also had that flow. He caught that, captured that. And although I don't usually do honorable mentions in this series, I have to include one because it's just a question of how much did they actually record. And that's Eugene Ormandy and the Philadelphia Orchestra, whose Delius recordings, there are only about a small handful of them. 2 or 3 or 4 of them. There's what you call it, Brig Fair and some other stuff are fabulous, absolutely fabulous, and gloriously played, marvelously played. But there just aren't enough of them for me to stick him in the pantheon of great Deliusers. He certainly made some great music with that composer, though. So there you have the 5: Beecham, Hickox, Mackerras, Barbirolli, and Groves. Notice that they are all kind of sort of English. Mackerras was, in between. But yeah, that's who they are. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me, and take care.